Hollywood loved giants. Towering heroes filled the screens of the Golden Age. Yet behind the glamour stood a surprising truth. Some of the most unforgettable performers barely reached 5 feet tall. These actors fought stereotypes, trick cameras, and stubborn casting traditions. What they lacked in height, they replaced with charisma, talent, and unforgettable presence. This is their remarkable story. Billy Curtis. Billy Curtis lived a life that Hollywood rarely allowed short actors to dream about. Born in Los Angeles in 1908, Curtis stood just 3 feet, 8 inches tall. Yet he refused to let the industry reduce him to novelty or background scenery. In an era when studios often used little people only as visual curiosities, Curtis insisted on building a real acting career. During the Golden Age, he appeared in dozens of films and television productions. His face quietly became familiar to audiences who might not have realized how often they had seen him. Curtis worked in adventure films, science fiction pictures, westerns, and fantasy productions that needed performers who could create unusual cinematic worlds. One of his most remembered roles arrived in the cult fantasy film The Wizard of Oz era productions, where actors of small stature were used to populate magical lands. Curtis later became especially recognizable for his role in High Plains Drifter, where his haunting presence helped create the strange atmosphere of the story. Behind the scenes, Curtis was respected as a professional who always arrived prepared. Directors valued him because he treated even the smallest roles with complete seriousness. That dedication allowed him to keep working for decades. Curtis proved something powerful about Hollywood. Height might shape the roles an actor receives, but it does not decide whether a performer becomes memorable. With determination and patience, he carved out a place in film history. In a town obsessed with towering leading men, Curtis stood less than 4 feet tall. Yet somehow, he managed to stand just as tall in the memory of audiences. Daisy Earles. Daisy Earles entered Hollywood during one of its strangest and most controversial eras. Born in Germany in 1903, she stood barely 3 feet, 4 inches tall. Along with her siblings, she became part of a unique troupe of performers with dwarfism who found unexpected fame on the American stage and screen. Her most famous appearance came in the unforgettable and unsettling film Freaks, directed by Todd Browning. The movie shocked audiences in 1932 because it cast real performers with physical differences instead of traditional actors wearing makeup. Daisy appeared alongside her brother, Harry Earles, in a story that dared to challenge how society viewed people who looked different. For Daisy, the film was more than a role. It was an opportunity to present dignity in a world that often treated performers of small stature as curiosities. On screen, she delivered a performance filled with humanity and quiet emotion. The reaction from audiences, however, was brutal. Many theaters refused to show the movie. Critics called it disturbing and dangerous. The backlash nearly destroyed the careers of many actors involved in the production. Yet time changed the legacy of the film. Decades later, Freaks became recognized as one of the boldest and most daring films of early Hollywood. Daisy Earles became part of cinema history because she participated in a project that challenged the cruelty of public perception. She may have stood barely over 3 feet tall, but through one unforgettable film, Daisy Earles helped create one of the most powerful statements ever made about acceptance and humanity. Harry Earles. Harry Earles was one of the most recognizable little people in the history of classic Hollywood. Born in Germany in 1902, he stood only 3 feet 6 inches tall. Yet his determination and stage presence made him one of the most memorable performers of his generation. Before arriving in Hollywood, Harry worked in European circus and vaudeville acts alongside his siblings. Their performances eventually attracted the attention of American talent scouts. Soon, the Earles family was performing on Broadway and touring across the United States. Hollywood discovered Harry at a time when the film industry was fascinated with unusual performers. But unlike many actors used simply for spectacle, Harry possessed genuine acting skill. His expressive face and emotional range allowed him to bring real depth to his roles. His most legendary performance came in Freaks. In the film, he plays Hans, a gentle circus performer who falls tragically in love with a cruel trapeze artist. The story slowly unfolds into betrayal, humiliation, and revenge. Harry delivered a performance that remains haunting even today. His portrayal of innocence and heartbreak gives the film its emotional center. Without him, the story would lose its tragic power. When audiences first saw the film, many were shocked by the raw realism of the cast. The backlash forced the movie into obscurity for decades. But later generations began to understand its message about cruelty and compassion. Today, Harry Earles stands as a symbol of resilience in Hollywood history. In an industry built on illusion, he proved that authenticity could sometimes be more powerful than glamour. And although he stood only 3 feet 6 inches tall, his performance in one controversial film ensured his legacy would loom much larger than most stars of his era. Mickey Carroll. Mickey Carroll became one of the most beloved little performers in Hollywood history, even though many viewers never knew his name. Born in 1919 in St. Louis, Missouri, Carroll stood around 4 feet 4 inches tall. His size might have limited opportunities in ordinary life, but in the strange imagination of Hollywood fantasy films, it opened doors to cinematic history. His defining moment arrived when he was cast in the magical world of The Wizard of Oz. Carroll portrayed one of the famous Munchkin characters, the tiny residents of the colorful land who welcome Dorothy when she first arrives after the tornado carries her away from Kansas. The production of the film became legendary for many reasons. One of the most unusual details was the enormous number of little actors hired to play the Munchkins. Carroll quickly became one of the most recognizable among them, thanks to his lively personality and energetic performance. While the role might seem small today, at the time it was a rare opportunity for performers of short stature to appear in a major studio production. Carroll embraced the moment fully. His performance helped create the unforgettable atmosphere that made the opening of the film so magical. Years later, Carroll continued appearing at film festivals and conventions where fans celebrated the enduring popularity of the movie. The joy he brought to audiences in 1939 continued to echo across generations. Standing barely 4 feet tall, Mickey Carroll became part of one of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history. A reminder that sometimes the smallest figures can help create the biggest movie memories. Jerry Marin. Jerry Marin's career represents one of the longest-lasting connections between Hollywood's golden age and modern movie history. Born in 1920 in Boston, Massachusetts, Marin stood about 4 feet 6 inches tall. That height would eventually place him in one of the most famous fantasy films ever created. Like many little actors of the era, Marin was cast as a Munchkin in The Wizard of Oz, but his role carried a special distinction. He became the performer who famously presents Dorothy with the giant lollipop in one of the film's most cheerful moments. The scene lasted only seconds, yet it turned Marin into an enduring symbol of the movie's whimsical charm. For decades, fans remembered the cheerful little character with the oversized candy. Unlike many performers from the production, Marin continued to remain connected with fans long after the Golden Age ended. He attended countless screening celebrations and anniversary events dedicated to the film. As the years passed, he became known as the last surviving Munchkin actor from the movie. That title gave him a unique role as a living link to one of Hollywood's most beloved classics. Whenever audiences gathered to celebrate the magic of The Wizard of Oz, Jerry Marin was often there smiling and sharing stories about the extraordinary experience of being part of the film. His career proved something remarkable about cinema. Even a brief appearance can create a legacy that lasts generations. Jerry Marin stood just 4 feet 6 inches tall, but the joy he delivered in a single scene helped secure his place in the permanent history of Hollywood fantasy. Angelo Rosito. Angelo Rosito built one of the most unusual careers ever seen in classic Hollywood. Born in 1908 in Omaha, Nebraska. Rosito stood only 4 feet 3 inches tall. His distinctive appearance and powerful personality made him impossible for audiences to forget. Rosito entered show business through circus and vaudeville performances. During the 1920s, these traveling shows often featured performers with unusual physical traits. For Rosito, it became a gateway into the entertainment world. Hollywood soon noticed him. Directors recognized that his presence could instantly add mystery danger or dark humor to a film. Rosito appeared in dozens of productions across several decades, often portraying strange characters, thieves, or mischievous figures. His most controversial early appearance came in Freaks. The movie assembled real circus performers and individuals with physical differences into a dramatic story that shocked audiences around the world. Rosito's participation placed him among a group of actors whose work would later be re-evaluated as groundbreaking. Decades later, Rosito achieved another memorable role in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, where he played Master, one half of the unusual duo, Master Blaster, who controlled the post-apocalyptic city of Bartertown. Despite his small stature, Rosito commanded attention whenever he appeared on screen. His intense expressions and commanding voice gave him an authority that seemed to contradict his height. Through a career that lasted more than 50 years, Angelo Rosito proved that physical size did not determine cinematic presence. At barely 4 feet 3 inches tall, he managed to become one of the most recognizable character actors in Hollywood's long and strange history. Billy Gilbert. Billy Gilbert was one of the most distinctive comedic performers of Hollywood's golden age. Born in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1994. Gilbert grew up in a theatrical family that traveled constantly with stage productions. Although he stood only around 5 feet 2 inches tall, he possessed a personality that filled every room he entered. Gilbert became famous for one particular talent that audiences never forgot: his explosive comic sneezes. The moment he appeared on screen, viewers knew that chaos and laughter would soon follow. That unique ability turned him into a regular presence in the slapstick comedies of the 1930s and 1940s. His work with the legendary comedy team in Babes in Toyland remains one of his most remembered appearances. Gilbert frequently played pompous villains or easily flustered authority figures whose dignity would crumble under absurd circumstances. Despite his relatively small height, he managed to dominate scenes through exaggerated physical comedy and booming vocal delivery. Directors loved casting him because his reactions could transform even a simple moment into a comedic highlight. Gilbert appeared in more than 200 films throughout his career. Many were short comedies produced by major studios that needed reliable performers, capable of delivering quick laughs. Gilbert became exactly that kind of dependable entertainer. While he was rarely the leading star of a production, audiences remembered him long after the credits rolled. His exaggerated sneezes became legendary in classic comedy circles. Billy Gilbert proved that presence in Hollywood has little to do with physical height. At just over 5 feet tall, he created some of the loudest laughs of the golden age. Pat Morita. Pat Morita may be remembered today for later film roles, but his journey into Hollywood began during the final years of the classic studio era. Born in California in 1932 to Japanese-American parents, Morita stood around 5 feet 2 inches tall. His small frame often contrasted sharply with the powerful emotional performances he delivered. Morita's childhood was marked by extraordinary hardship. At the age of 2, he contracted spinal tuberculosis and spent nearly a decade in hospitals and body casts. Doctors doubted he would ever walk normally again. Yet Morita eventually recovered and pursued a career in entertainment. He began performing stand-up comedy during the 1960s, when Asian actors rarely received opportunities in mainstream television or film. His humor often explored the strange cultural gap between traditional Japanese expectations and American life. Morita gained recognition through television, before eventually appearing in films like The Karate Kid, which turned him into an international icon decades later. And however, His early career reflected the struggles faced by short character actors during the fading years of the studio system. Directors often underestimated him because of his size and quiet demeanor. Yet Morita's performances revealed deep emotional strength and warmth. Audiences connected instantly with his sincerity. Standing barely 5 feet 2 inches tall, Morita carried an inner strength that made him feel much larger on screen. His journey from hospital patient to Hollywood legend remains one of the most inspiring stories in entertainment history. Paul Williams. Paul Williams possessed one of the most recognizable voices in popular music and film. Yet many audiences were surprised to discover how physically small the talented songwriter actually was. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1940, Williams stood about 5 feet 2 inches tall, although best known as a composer who wrote classic songs for film and television. Williams also appeared on screen during the later years of Hollywood's classic era. His unique voice and expressive face gave him a memorable presence in both musical productions and fantasy films. Williams wrote music for major motion pictures, including The Muppet Movie, where his songwriting helped shape one of the most beloved family movies ever produced. But he also stepped in front of the camera. One of his most fascinating acting appearances came in Phantom of the Paradise, where he played the sinister record producer Swan. Despite his small height, Williams projected an eerie authority that dominated the entire film. Throughout the 1970s, he became a regular guest on television talk shows and variety programs. His gentle personality and musical brilliance earned admiration from artists across the industry. Williams demonstrated that creative power does not depend on physical size. While he stood only a little over 5 feet tall, his songwriting shaped some of the most memorable music ever created for film. His career stands as proof that talent often rises far above the limits that appearance might suggest. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci eventually became one of the most intense performers ever to emerge from American cinema. Yet when he first entered the entertainment world, very few people imagined that a man barely 5 feet 3 inches tall could dominate the screen with such explosive authority. Born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1943, Pesci began performing as a child in radio and television programs. His small stature often led casting directors to overlook him when searching for traditional leading men. Hollywood during the classic era preferred tall, charismatic stars who appeared larger than life. Pesci did not fit that mold, but what he lacked in height, he replaced with raw intensity. His acting style felt unpredictable, electric, and dangerous. Audiences quickly realized that the quiet man with the sharp eyes could erupt into unforgettable performances. His collaborations with director Martin Scorsese transformed him into a cinematic force. In Raging Bull, Pesci portrayed Joey LaMotta, the fiercely loyal brother of boxer Jake LaMotta. The role earned him widespread recognition for his emotional realism. Later, he delivered one of the most frightening gangster performances ever captured on film in Goodfellas. His portrayal of the unpredictable mobster, Tommy DeVito, won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Pesci proved something extraordinary about screen presence. True authority on film does not come from physical size. It comes from emotional power and fearless performance. Standing just over 5 feet tall, Joe Pesci created characters that felt explosive, volatile, and unforgettable. In an industry filled with towering leading men, he became one of the most intimidating figures ever to appear on screen. Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito built a career that completely shattered Hollywood's traditional expectations of leading men. Born in Neptune, New Jersey, in 1944, DeVito stands only 4 feet 10 inches tall. His height might have prevented many actors from being taken seriously in the film industry. Instead, it became part of his unique identity. DeVito first gained recognition through television before exploding into film success during the 1970s and 1980s. His sharp comedic timing and bold personality made him impossible to ignore. Even in scenes filled with other performers, DeVito immediately drew attention. One of his earliest memorable film appearances arrived in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he portrayed Martini. The role introduced audiences to his unusual combination of humor, vulnerability, and intensity. Later, DeVito became one of Hollywood's most entertaining villains when he played the grotesque Penguin in Batman Returns. Be hidden beneath heavy makeup, he created a character that felt both tragic and terrifying. Beyond acting, DeVito also became a respected director and producer. Through his company, Jersey Films, he helped bring several influential projects to the screen. Throughout his career, DeVito embraced his physical uniqueness, rather than hiding it. Instead of trying to appear taller, he leaned into the qualities that made him different. Standing less than 5 feet tall, Danny DeVito became one of the most recognizable personalities in modern Hollywood. His success proved that charisma and creativity often matter far more than physical height. Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd represents one of the most fascinating examples of how Hollywood once tried to hide the height of its leading men. Born in 1913 in Arkansas, Ladd stood only about 5 feet 3 inches tall. That made him significantly shorter than many of the actresses who appeared beside him on screen. During the 1940s, Hollywood studios were obsessed with the illusion of heroic masculinity. Leading men were expected to look tall, confident, and physically dominant. Ladd's height threatened that illusion, yet his calm voice, icy blue eyes, and mysterious presence made him irresistible to audiences. His breakthrough arrived in the film noir masterpiece, This Gun for Hire. Ladd portrayed the cold professional killer, Raven. Despite speaking very little throughout the film, his quiet intensity captivated viewers. Studios quickly realized they had discovered a new kind of star. However, they carefully managed how he was filmed. Directors used clever camera angles, elevated platforms, and specially designed sets to make Ladd appear taller than he actually was. Even with those tricks, his screen presence remained undeniable. In the legendary Western, Shane Ladd delivered the role that would define his legacy. His portrayal of the mysterious gunfighter became one of the most iconic performances in the history of Western cinema. Alan Ladd demonstrated that true cinematic power does not depend on physical size. His quiet, controlled acting style created characters who felt larger than life. At barely 5 feet 3 inches, he became one of the most memorable leading men of Hollywood's golden age. Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre possessed one of the most haunting faces ever captured by Hollywood cameras. Born in 1904 in what is now Slovakia, Lorre stood about 5 feet 3 inches tall. His physical presence was small, but his talent for portraying troubled, mysterious characters made him unforgettable. Before arriving in Hollywood, Lorre built a reputation in European cinema. His breakthrough performance came in the chilling German thriller M, directed by Fritz Lang. In the film, he portrayed a disturbed criminal hunted by both police and criminals. The role shocked audiences and revealed Lorre's extraordinary acting ability. When political tensions in Europe forced many artists to flee the continent, Lorre eventually found his way to Hollywood. American studios quickly recognized the eerie charisma that had made him famous overseas. During the 1940s, he became a frequent presence in dark crime dramas and thrillers. Yet one of his most beloved appearances came in The Maltese Falcon, where he played the sly criminal Joel Cairo, opposite Humphrey Bogart. Despite standing only 5 feet 3 inches tall, Lorre dominated scenes through his intense eyes, nervous voice, and unpredictable expressions. He created characters who felt both dangerous and strangely sympathetic. Audiences never forgot the uneasy tension he brought to every role. Whether he appeared as villain or victim, his performances carried an emotional complexity that few actors could match. Peter Lorre proved that cinematic power often comes from personality rather than physical stature. Though he stood barely above 5 feet tall, his unsettling performances left a towering shadow across the world of classic film. Mickey Rooney. Few actors in Hollywood history experienced fame as early and as intensely as Mickey Rooney. Born in Brooklyn, New York in 1920, Rooney stood about 5 feet 2 inches tall. His small frame, however, never slowed the explosive energy that defined his career. Rooney entered show business almost from birth. His parents were vaudeville performers who placed him on stage as a child. By the time he reached his teenage years, he had already become one of the most recognizable young actors in America. His rise to superstardom arrived through the hugely popular Andy Hardy film series. Beginning with Love Finds. Andy Hardy, Rooney portrayed the energetic, optimistic teenager, Andy Hardy. Audiences across the country embraced the character. At the height of his popularity, Rooney became the biggest box office star in Hollywood. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, his films earned enormous profits for major studios. Despite his height, Rooney possessed extraordinary charisma. His rapid speech, expressive eyes, and boundless enthusiasm allowed him to dominate the screen even when surrounded by taller co-stars. He later delivered a powerful dramatic performance in The Black Stallion, which earned him an Academy Award nomination decades after his early fame. Mickey Rooney's career lasted nearly 80 years. Few performers have remained active for so long, across so many different eras of entertainment. Standing barely 5 feet, 2 inches tall, Rooney proved that energy, determination, and talent could elevate an actor far beyond the limits of physical stature. Billy Barty. Billy Barty remains one of the most extraordinary figures ever to appear in Hollywood history. Born in Illinois in 1924. Barty stood only 3 feet, 9 inches tall, yet he built a career that lasted more than 7 decades. Barty entered show business as a child performer during the 1930s. At a time when actors with dwarfism were often limited to novelty roles, Barty pushed relentlessly to be treated as a professional performer. His early work included appearances in films such as Gold Diggers of 1933, where his natural charm quickly caught the attention of audiences. Unlike many actors of small stature, Barty developed remarkable comedic timing. Over the decades, he appeared in hundreds of productions, including fantasy films, adventure stories, and television programs. One of his most memorable later roles arrived in Willow, where he portrayed the High Aldwin. The role allowed him to bring both humor and authority to a magical world. Beyond acting, Barty became an important advocate for performers with dwarfism. In 1957, he founded an organization dedicated to improving opportunities and dignity for people of short stature. His activism helped transform how the entertainment industry treated actors with physical differences. Barty fought for respect, equality, and fair representation. Though he stood less than 4 feet tall, Billy Barty left an enormous legacy. Through persistence, talent, and courage, he changed the path for countless performers who followed. Hollywood once believed heroes had to stand tall. These performers proved something very different. Talent has no measuring tape. From unforgettable villains to beloved comic legends, these short actors left towering legacies in cinema history. If this story surprised you, subscribe for more hidden Hollywood stories that changed film forever.